Hey, good evening. Welcome to online Bible study here at Shiloh Baptist Church. And just in case you don't know who I am, my name is Billy Graham. And no, I mean, not really. You know who I am, Dan Arsenal. So we're going to talk about the Lord of the Sabbath today. And I love the message. I hope you will. Let's get right to it. Mark chapter 2. And I love the fact that there are two right here back-to-back issues with the Sabbath. And Jesus was always running into the Pharisees, of course. And this is one of the subjects where Jesus kept hammering. That's what I want you to see that Jesus kept hammering about the Sabbath. I think that's really unique here. So let's start in Mark chapter 2, verse 23. One Sabbath, Jesus was going through the grain fields. And as his disciples walked along, they began to pick some of the heads of the grain. The Pharisees said to him, "Look, why are they doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath?" He answered, "Have you never read what David did when he and his companions were hungry and in need? In the days of Abiathar, the high priest, he entered the house of God and ate the consecrated bread, which is lawful only for the priest to eat. And he also gave some to his companions." Verse 27. Then he said to them, "The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath." And watch this, verse 28. And the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath. Now, let's keep reading into chapter 3 here. Another time he went into the synagogue, and a man with a shriveled hand was there. Some of them were looking for a reason to accuse Jesus, so they watched him closely to see if he would heal him on the Sabbath. Jesus said to the man with the shriveled hand, "Stand up in front of everyone." Then Jesus asked them, "Which is lawful on the Sabbath, to do good or to do evil, to save life or to kill?" But they remained silent. He looked around at them in anger and deeply, I love this, deeply distressed. And we read through that stuff deeply. Jesus was deeply distressed as if it almost didn't happen. When in the scriptures it says that Jesus is deeply distressed, like in the Garden of Eden, he was deeply distressed, and at their stubborn hearts. And he said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." He stretched it out, and his hand was completely restored. Then the Pharisees went out. Now watch this. This is the key to both of these here. Then the Pharisees went out and began to plot with the Herodians how they might kill Jesus. Now, what about the Sabbath? Well, the first thing you'd have to say is that it is one of the 10 commandments. That's pretty heavy duty, don't you think? Remember the Sabbath to keep it holy. And without getting in too much detail, I want to just say that the whole idea of the Sabbath comes from creation. And I think you know this, but I think it's important to reiterate it. So Jesus created the universe in 6 days, and on the seventh day, what does it say? He rested on the seventh day. Now, there's a lot of things in that we need to mention, just to say that what does it mean for God to rest? Does that mean he goes to sleep? No. Does it mean he take a nap? No. And so let me tell you what it really means. In Psalm 48, I think it's verse 13, it says that God sits on his throne to judge the nations. And when the Bible talks about God sitting on his throne, it's the idea of God resting on his throne. Think about it like this. God created the universe in 6 days. And then God rested on his throne. Well, what is he really doing here? He's stopping work. Number one, he's not creating from nothing. anymore. As a matter of fact, Hebrews chapter 11 says that he spoke the worlds into existence by his word. And so God, in a sense, stopped speaking those kinds of issues in the creation story. God said it, and it was done. God said it, and it was done. There's a completely extra teaching on all that, but we're not going to get into today. Maybe at some point we will. But the idea is that God spoke the worlds into existence, and I think that's pretty remarkable in itself. Now. Then think about this. Here's what God did. God sat on his throne, and Colossians, let's keep your place in Mark, but go to Colossians chapter 1. Then we're going to start in verse 13, I believe, or 15. Start in verse 15. All right, here we go. Now watch this. The Son, Colossians 1:15, the Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all what? Creation. Now that's important. It's about creation. For, verse 16, for in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities, all things have been created through him and for him. Now watch this. Here's what God did on the seventh day. He sat on his throne. He rested on his throne. Well, what does that mean? Here it is, verse 17. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. Now watch this. All things hold together. Not only is God our creator, he is our sustainer. And so everything you've heard me talk about this frequently, or at least consistently. Whereas if God was not holding together the atoms of the universe that he created, the atoms would explode. And there is no real reason for in physics to reason why the atoms hold together. Jesus is holding them together. So he is not creating in that sense he is resting, but he is not doing anything. He is sustaining the entire universe that he created, and I presume will be forever. I think that's pretty remarkable. So now the second thing that he does, think about this, is that he puts Adam in charge of his creation as a steward. And Adam, of course, is an image bearer of God. So let us make man in our image, he says. And so God makes Adam and Eve, and then he puts them in charge to tend the garden, to keep and now God's sustaining the universe. Adam is tending the universe. He's a steward of that. I think that's wonderful and remarkable too. Now, so that's the idea of the Sabbath comes from creation. Think about it. Think about it. God says, Adam, I want you to be like me. I want you to work for 6 days, and then I want you to rest. Okay, we can do that. And the idea of God resting doesn't mean that he's sleeping. Maybe with mankind, humanity, there's a little more sleeping involved, of course, but we do that every day. But the point is, when you're resting, it means you're not creating things. So there were some things that they didn't do. The Pharisees, however, now watch, here's where you get in the entanglement. The Pharisees added 39 types. Now watch this, 39 types of activity that you can't do on the Sabbath. Now watch this, because this is going to come to the big picture of why Jesus is the Lord of the Sabbath. But there's more to it than that. Jesus says, I'm the Lord, the Son of Man is Lord. And then it says, even of the Sabbath. So the Pharisees wanted to take the law, take the word of God, and they wanted to upstage God himself. They wanted to add more to it. And if you have a legalistic mindset where it's all about, did we do enough for God? Have we pleased God enough? Are we doing this? You lose the relationship, and now you have a religion. And so religion it will always do this. Religion will always add something else. There's never enough. There's not, and keep in mind, Jesus is the Lord of the rest. He's the Lord of the Sabbath. He rested himself. He tells Adam to rest one day a week. There's more to it than that. And that's what we're talking about here today. The Pharisees added, here's one, the Sabbath journey. You could only travel this is so ridiculous. And let me just say that again. It's so ridiculous to see what humanity can do without God. And that's exactly what the Pharisees are doing there. They're trying to add everything. Let's see how many details we can milk out of this whole Sabbath thing so that we can be greater, so that we can be better, so that God will like us even more. And so they've made a rule. You can only travel 3,000 feet on a Sabbath journey. Now, if you were going to get food after 3,000 feet, you could go 3,000 feet more. I mean, come on. If you went from one location to another carrying something other than food, you were in violation of the Sabbath. Even if you wore your clothes, if your clothes are on your back, it's not you're not working. But if you take clothes with you, that's work. So you can't do that on a Sabbath as well. There's so many things. You can't light a fire on the Sabbath. So you could light a fire the day before the Sabbath and keep it going, which is of course what they all did. But you could not light a fire on the Sabbath here. The other thing they couldn't do was reaping grain. And that's one of the 39. And that's why the Pharisees jump on Jesus about the disciples walking. They're hungry. They're going through a cornfield and they're eating some of the corn. And the Pharisees said, you can't do that. It's unlawful. Technically, it wasn't unlawful for them to do that. They couldn't harvest the grain, but they could pick and eat it. There was no violation of that at all. So the second thing is, what about healing? Jesus says, okay. Notice you have two things right back to back. Mark chapter 2, Mark chapter 3. They're both about violations of the Sabbath. Jesus, let me say it again. Jesus keeps sticking that to them. He keeps bringing it up to them. First you have the grain. Now you have the healing. Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath? Now here's what they're missing. Now watch this. What is the Sabbath for? Well, it's for rest. What does the rest do? It restores your body. Right? That's what it's for. It's for a day of rest to restore your body. And there's a lot of just plain physics about that. Your body does need rest. Listen, now watch this. When Jesus healed the withered hand, that's exactly what he was doing. He was restoring something that had been lost, the withered hand. So he was doing exactly, Jesus is the Lord of the Sabbath. He did exactly what the Sabbath was doing for most people normally that didn't have a withered hand. And so the Sabbath restored their energy. It restored their abilities to go back and do the work. And so Jesus is doing that same thing. He's exemplifying the Sabbath itself. Now watch this. The Pharisees completely miss that. Talk about missing the forest for the trees. They certainly surely did do that. So that's a big part of this, what we're talking about today. Now, but it goes on. Now let's go back to Mark chapter 2 and verse 27. And this is kind of where we're going through here to finish this. But oh my goodness, is this wonderful. It really is. Mark chapter 2, verse 27. Then he said to them, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. Why is he saying that? Well, the Pharisees were making so many rules, it made the Sabbath day a burden to them. And that's what Jesus said about the Pharisees. You lay burdens on them instead of making this a restful time, a day off, so to speak, which was what everybody wanted. We still want that. We want our day off. Well, that's biblical. And so the Pharisees, by adding one thing after another, well, maybe we'll need to do something else. Maybe we need to do something else to keep the very law that they were trying to follow. And so Jesus said to them, no. You're making this backwards, Pharisees. You're making the Sabbath rule over men when actually the men were supposed to rule over the Sabbath. This was a day off. This wasn't supposed to be trying to make everything just right. This was about taking a day off. And so that's the first thing that's important here. But the second thing about it is this, and I want you to hold your place in Mark again. This is real important. Go back to Matthew chapter 11. Now we're getting to my favorite part here. And I hope you might know where I'm going here. Verse 20, let's just back up a little bit. Matthew 11:25. At that time, Jesus said, I praise you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, because you have hidden these things from the wise and learned and revealed them to little children. Yes, Father, for this is what you were pleased to do. All things have been committed to me. All things have been committed to me by my Father. No one knows the Son except the Father, and no one knows the Father except the Son, and those to whom the Son chooses to reveal him. Now, here it is. Now, watch this. These are the red letters. Jesus says in Matthew 11:28, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Sabbath. I will give you Sabbath. Rest. What's he talking about? He's talking about the law and grace. He's talking about religion, and as we say, relationship. Come to me. Notice it's this. Don't come to the law. But come to me personally, the person of God, the person of Christ. Come to me, all you who are what? Weary and burdened, I will give you rest. He's not talking here primarily about the burden of sin, though certainly that's a big part of it. He's talking about the burden of the law. He's talking about the burden of the Sabbath, because the Pharisees were adding things, and they will always do that. Let me keep your place here, but I just want to throw in a parenthetical note. When the rich young ruler came to Jesus, what was he asking? He said, I'm not sure I'm going to heaven. I'm just not sure. So what else do I have to do to get to heaven? In other words, let's add some more details here. And so Jesus says, if you want to go that route, here's how you have to do it. Now, you've done all the negatives. Here's the positives. Sell all you have, and then give it to the poor, and then come and follow me, and you'll have great rewards in heaven. And of course, the young man was rich, and he couldn't do that. What's Jesus saying? If you want to add things, there's no limit to how much you can add to keep the law, if that's what you want to do. If you want to go the religious route, if you want to be religious, you have to keep adding. It's a catch-22, really, because all those things are right. Love your neighbor as yourself. Well, how do you love your neighbor as yourself? You give everything to the poor, to that neighbor who's poor, and then you know what happens? Then I become the poor. It really doesn't work quite like that. Now, we can give to the poor, and should and do, but the idea is this: the law will continually add things to make it greater and greater and greater, because it's trying to build up the person rather than coming to the real person, which is Christ. And so back to Matthew chapter 11 here. Come unto me. Come unto me, Jesus said. I am the way and the truth and the life. No man comes to the Father except by me. I am the Lord of the Sabbath. Then now back to Mark. He says, so the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. And here's verse 28. So the Son of Man, now Jesus, his favorite expression of himself, his favorite self identity is the Son of Man. He gets that from Daniel chapter 7, verse 13, where Daniel in his prophecy sees a man like the Son of Man who will rule all of the nations. And so it's a designation of the Messiah. That's Jesus' favorite expression. He likes to talk about himself as the Son of Man. Here he says the Son of Man, the Messiah, is also, and he doesn't say also, he says is Lord, but then there's this one word here, even. The Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath. What does the even mean there? I'm going to tell you what I think it means. I think it means the entire law. God is in charge of the entire law. I am the Lord of all of it. I'm gonna do something here that I think is really neat. It's something that I've been working on. You have creation, and at the end of creation, what did God say? He looked on all of his creation and he said, "It is very good." And then what he basically said is, "I'm finished." God doesn't create now. He could, but he doesn't, because what he has made is finished. It's done. And so he says, I'm going to take a day of rest. I'm going to sustain my creation, and I want Adam and Eve to do the same thing. On the cross, the same exact thing happened. What's the last thing, next to the last thing Jesus said on the cross? It is finished. The work that I have done on your behalf is a lot like creation. In creation, God created the universe. On the cross, God created the forgiveness for our sins by his own work, by his own treacherous, torturous work. And then he said, "It is finished. I'm done with this." Which is, I think, that's my favorite saying on the cross. It's finished. It's done with. And thank God that it is. So now here's what I want you to do. I want you to step out from the creation and step out from the cross and look at this as sort of a big picture here. When Jesus said, "I am the Lord," or he's basically, that's what he's saying, the Son of Man, I am the Lord of the Sabbath. I am the Lord of the law itself. And so what he's saying is, come to me. If you come to me, the law is taken care of. If you come to me, everything is fixed. It's finished. There's a Sabbath rest that is beyond all those things. I'm going to read to you here a few verses, and I'm not going to turn to them, but if you want to jot these down, I think it'd be great if you did. All of the I am statements have to do with resting. Now notice what he says. Jesus said, "I am," and I know he continually says the Son of Man is Lord, even, all the way up to the Sabbath. It's like the Sabbath is a picture of the entire law. And so here's what God says. In John chapter 6, verse 35, Jesus said, "I am the bread of life." And then you know what he says? If you come to me, you won't be thirsty and you won't be hungry. You have freedom. You have rest. You have rest from hunger and thirst. But it's not physical. It's not a physical hunger. It's a spiritual hunger and thirsty. Come to me, the Son of Man, and I will give you rest. You see that? The rest from hunger, the rest from thirst, because I am the bread of life. In John chapter 8, verse 12, Jesus said, "I am the light." And so you're going to rest from darkness. Darkness will not overtake you now. And so here again, the Son of Man, is the Lord of the rest, the Sabbath rest. The Sabbath rest being much deeper than physical rest. The Sabbath rest is the rest of salvation. I am the light. And so you're going to have rest from darkness. John chapter 8 or John chapter 10 verse 11, Jesus said, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd will lay down his life for the sheep. And so if you come to me, the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath, you will have rest from danger, because the good shepherd will lay down his life for the sheep. John chapter 9 or chapter 10 verse 10, I am the door. By me, if any man enters, he will be saved. It's how you get into the kingdom, through the rest, the Sabbath rest of Jesus Christ. You know, and we're kind of finishing up here, but I think it's so important. This is really the message that I want to give you. The uniqueness of Christianity is this. Now watch this carefully. The uniqueness of Christianity is that Jesus is everything. In every other religion, you have some kind of a religious leader who points to somebody else or something else, and here's what you do. Here's good advice for you. You take this advice, and you're going to get in good relationship with God. In Christianity, it's very different. Jesus says, I am your relationship. I am the Lord of the harvest. I am the Lord of the Sabbath. I am your rest. Come unto me. Come unto me, Jesus said, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, and you will find rest to your souls. Christianity is all about our beginner. The one who started Christianity is Jesus, and it's all about Him. It's not about religion. It's about relationship. I'm gonna finish with this. There was I got two things I want to say. First thing I want to say is this. Back to Mark, chapter 3, verse 6. Then the Pharisees went out and began to plot with the Herodians how they might kill Jesus. You talk about strange bedfellows. The Herodians and the Pharisees were those. They were as far apart as you could possibly be. Now, you know this, Herod Antipas was a plant of Rome. He was not really even a king, he was a tetrarch. But the Herodians were following him. And so in doing that, these are Jewish people who were following Herod Antipas. And they were following Herod because Herod was following Rome. These are the worst kind of Jewish people you could imagine. They were not strict about the Torah. They were not no more than Herod was. They were just followers of them. So let me tell you something. They were like the younger son of the prodigal son story. They were like the younger son. They were just do anything. We're just going to follow Herod. We're going to go with the flow. Whatever works is where we're going. The Pharisees were exactly the opposite. They were the moral standard. They were so hate-filled about Herod and about Rome that they did everything. You know what the word Pharisees means, right? It means separation. The Herodians were opposite of separated. The Pharisees were the ones who separated themselves from everything else. Now these two groups, it's like the older son and the younger son ganging up against the father. And that's exactly what happened here in the Herodians and the Pharisees. They plotted together how they might kill Jesus because both of them were about religion. Jesus was about relationship. I'm going to finish with this. There's a British theologian whose name was Richard Lucas. Brilliant guy. Back in the early 1900s. And he did a little play, like a play. And he made a conversation between a first century Christian and a Roman friend. Let me read the conversation to you. It's not long at all. The Roman friend, who's a pagan, says to this Christian, "Hey, I heard you found religion. That's good. Religion's a really good thing. Where's your temple?" And the Christian says, "Well, we don't really have a temple. Jesus is our temple. Well, that throws the Roman out of whack. And he says, wait a minute, you don't have a temple? Well, in that case, then where are your priests? Where do your priests do their thing? And the Christian said, we don't have priests. Jesus is our high priest. Wow, now the Roman's really getting off kilter here and says, okay, wait a minute. You don't have a temple, you don't have a priest, then who's making the sacrifices? And the Christian says, Jesus is our sacrifice too. So Jesus is our temple, Jesus is our priest, and Jesus is our sacrifice. And then finally, the Roman says, what kind of religion is this? And the Christian says, it's not a religion at all. It's a relationship. The Son of Man is the Lord even of the Sabbath. I hope this is helpful to you. It certainly is to me. I like it a lot. Thanks for watching.